the Witches and Prose podcast. My name is Haley Camarillo, author of Fury and Flame, book one of the Witching Hour series. Today I have with me author Richard Alexander. Hello, and thank you for being
Howdy.
on the show.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, can you please tell us about your book?
So Ashes to Ashes it's kind of a mashup genre. It's a little bit of horror thriller, a little bit of mystery, a lot of fantasy. I've kind of termed it as a dark modern fantasy.
Okay.
I don't want to quite put it in the urban fantasy category because it's not really a city setting. But it takes place in a small fictional town in the Appalachian Range.
Okay.
It's got all that mystical background to the area, the nice wooded surroundings, the mountains, and at least in my head, it's this beautiful area. And then it surrounds Dameon Hayes. He's a 20-something-year-old failed cop turned private eye, and his life kind of fell apart when his father was killed right in front of him 20 years previously to when the book takes place. And then he took that trauma and everything surrounding it and kind of turned it into his own power, his own je ne sais quoi. And then he's kind of taken up the mantle of being the protector of his community. Even with being the failed cop, he's the town's favorite son. Everyone loves him, and there's reasons he failed at being a cop. It's just, and without spoiling too much, because I hope I do it adequately enough in the book to explain why. The small town of Greenvale lays on the eastern side of the Appalachian Range, and it's all but lost to time. Like it's a very modern but very traditional type of area.
Uh-huh.
And like everywhere, it's got its people, it's got creatures, and mysteries all of its own, just like anywhere else in America.
Hmm.
You got the Catholic Church speaking to the heart of the people, and that's really kind of the center of at least this book. From Ashes to Ashes, it takes place over the period of Lent. So it starts on Ash Wednesday and ends on Easter.
Okay.
And so it's kind of where I get the name Ashes to Ashes. The other thing is Dameon's his middle name. His first name is actually Ashley. So it's kind of a double
Oh,
meaning
I like
there.
that.
Yeah. So, and then you got the greed and capitalism from the companies running the local tobacco fields, which have been a main source of money for the area for generations upon generations. It's a traditional area for tobacco fields. It's not quite the deep South where it was cotton. You got a little more of the tobacco in the somewhat northern end of the South.
Okay.
So he kind of spends most of his days chasing either missing people, cheating husbands, cheating wives, and stuff like general PI work.
Okay.
But he also does some private security as needed, because he's got the people love him, so, and he's got the respect. He's grown up. His best friend's father, who kind of took over that fatherly mantle for him when his father was killed, he taught him to hunt, he taught him to track, and all of these things right alongside his own son, and they kind of grew up together,
Okay.
being best friends.
Hmm.
And then like I said, the story kind of picks up on Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent, and he leaves evening mass, and he goes and finds or stumbles across a new murder, and something about it kind of tickles the back of his brain, like he's seen this before. It's been 20 years or so, but he's seen it before. And then all of a sudden,
oh man,
he realizes that the guy he's been chasing for 20 years might actually be back.
oh my, that's thrilling.
It is.
Terrifying.
I feel like I really found my passion in this story.
Oh, that's great. That is amazing. So what inspired Ashes to Ashes?
Um, so the very initial kernel of the idea, I kind of got on my third, fourth, fifth watch through of a show called Evil on Paramount. It's
Okay.
Paramount, and it Evil is this psychological approach to what's the word? um, uh, it takes a psychological approach to the church's
Okay.
approach on exorcisms and the like.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting modern psychological thriller that I absolutely love. They did a really good job with it, I think, and I kind of saw it as like, I kind of want to do something like that, but uh, put my own spin on it. So
Okay.
the initial kernel is somewhere in there,
Awesome.
and then it just kind of evolved from there.
That's really cool. I like that. I like when you can kind of just, draw inspiration from TV or books or movies or whatever. It's nice when you can do that. Um, so is there any sort of romance in this? Can we expect any?
There's a little bit. I like Dameon's got a girlfriend.
Okay.
There's no spice though.
Okay.
The romance in this book kind of it takes a little bit of a back burner to the rest of the story. It's still, you still kind of see it. It's talked about, but they're not married yet, and they're a very traditionally Catholic couple. So there's no premarital sex,
Mhm.
and I do plan on it getting a little more involved later in the series, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle that either.
Okay.
This is book one in what I plan to be a 6-book series.
Okay. Awesome. That's very exciting.
It's a
Yay.
very big bookcase to take on.
It is. But believe in you. And you know what? If it's so inspiring and it's just a way for you to get out your thoughts and feelings and that inspiration. And
It has. I've had better therapy writing this book than any therapist I've actually been to in my 40 some years of life.
don't let therapists hear that. They're going to be really sad they're not getting any money. But no, I writing can be such a cathartic
It
experience.
is. It really is.
Yes, it's better than therapy. I would definitely agree. So tell us a little bit about like what your writing process is like. Are you a more character driven writer or plot driven?
I think I'm a little bit of a mishmash of everything.
Mhm.
The overarching story, I've plotted out points,
Okay.
but when it comes down to the individual story itself, it's very much by the seat of my pants. But when it comes to character driven, plot driven, I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. That's very
It's
cool. I think it's a good happy medium.
it is.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds.
I know where I want the story to go. I know what the characters should do in it, not necessarily what they will do.
Right.
And it just kind of plays itself out.
That's good. That's awesome. I feel like those are the most organic scenes, and it's such an organic way of writing. I, being a pantser myself, I'm biased, so
I definitely, and I edit as I go. I'll get a paragraph down and I'll look back up and I'll see all those little red lines. It's like, can't continue.
I know. It's so hard fighting that urge. I usually do at least a little cleanup before moving on to the first. I try not to do any heavy edits, but it's hard sometimes.
It is. It really is.
It's hard, especially when you read back on something and you're like, why did I write that? So
there's whole swatches of text I've just taken out completely.
yeah.
And I'll put it in another file and it's like, maybe I'll use this later.
Yeah, like possibly, maybe. So is this the first book that you have written, or have you done anything else?
It's the first one I've completed.
Okay.
It's my third attempt. The first two have been more or less completely abandoned. The second one, I'm trying to figure out a way to include it in the universe, though it's more of a fantasy book. So it's more of a classical knights and mages.
Okay.
And
kind of like swords and sorcery.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So overarching, I've called it the palm blossom cycle. So there's definitely an overarching kind of a Wheel of Time-esque circle going on there. So I'm working on the latter end of that cycle, heading into the end of times, and then so the my second attempt would be, and there's probably going to be a lot of rewriting needed, and there always is, be the front end of that, so it kind of balance out.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's very awesome. I like how so many people are trying to like make multiverses now. Like it's really cool to kind of like interconnect everyone's stories. So do you have a favorite character in your book?
I love them all. But if I had to choose one, it'd probably be my medical examiner.
Okay.
They're definitely only in it for a little bit of the story, but they do some major reveals. I'd like to think, and it's a non-binary character. And it's kind of an upper class Abby Shuto from NCIS.
Okay.
So they're kind of a bit goth, but a little upper class, but it's very on point for that image.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. And do you have a favorite quote potentially from the book?
It's another hard one.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those I've currently taken out of the book, but the void, with all its infinite inky blackness, gives birth to every story of terror ever told throughout time. At first we called them fairy tales, lessons we told our children to teach them to behave, to respect their elders, and to instill in them a healthy fear of the dark, the unknown. We learned of the noble folk, of deities, devils, demons, beings far older than man. These monsters don't hide under your bed. Rather, they are the nightmares that live in your head.
Ooh.
And that last little bit I've kind of taken on as my tagline. Like it's on my website, and it's kind of like Richard Alexander's nightmares in your head, or something something close to that. Anyways,
That is awesome. I like that. Very, very sinister and creepy.
I loved writing it. It was and it was kind of going to be the introduction to the world,
Okay.
and then it just kind of didn't fit in with the rest of the writing. So I'm still kind of figuring out where to put it or how to put it. And
Well, I hope that you can figure that out because that's a very powerful little excerpt. I like that a lot.
I really liked it.
So, well, again, thank you so much for being on today. It was
Not a
very
problem.
fun interviewing you and learning about Ashes to Ashes. I hope that you continue going full steam ahead on this writing journey, and I can't wait to see as it gets closer to publication.
And I hope it's soon. I really do.
Well, I have fingers crossed for you, sending all the good vibes.
Thank you.
So, thank you guys again for watching Witches and Prose podcast. I'm Haley. This was Richard Alexander, and we are out today.